Change is around us every day. So, how do you manage the changes that happen in mining year round? Welcome to another episode of Change Itself, hosted by Gus Miner and Eric Demers. The show is brought to you by Sophie and Technica Mining and is produced by Crownsman Partners. Now, here are your hosts, Gus and Eric.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Change Itself. We're here today with episode number 7. If you haven't had a chance to do it yet, if you go to changeitself.com, you'll be able to access our YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe. You'll get all the notifications for our upcoming episodes and all the new content that we're releasing. You can also find us on LinkedIn. So if you look up Change Itself on LinkedIn, you'll be able to you follow us and see what we're up to. So we're looking forward to have you guys join our journey and follow along and offer some input and feedback. Eric, today we've got a topic. It's pretty interesting. Change when it comes to change management, we've always got change competition. What gets the next crack at being looked at and move forward in initiative. So we're looking forward to having that. We've got Tara MacLean as guest on this show from MacLean Engineering. So Eric, what have you been up to since last time we've connected?
Well, the leaves are falling, so getting ready for winter. It's finally here. Got a big fishing trip coming, so getting ready for that. Yourself?
Oh, very nice. Yeah, no, it's just getting ready for that white stuff to fall down and getting everything prepared and managing the different situations that happen with schools, right? With the season that we're upon us, every time we've got anything that comes up, whether it's the short sniffles or the common cold or anything that has to, anything COVID related, we have to react to that. So, on that topic, COVID does take a lot of the change management focus on everyone, even though we're at the tail end of things. So yeah, that's been my world lately.
Right on. Well, we're going to introduce our guest. I know you
Right on.
mentioned who's joining us, but welcome to episode 7, Tara.
Thanks. I'm super happy to be here. So thank you guys.
Very good. So yeah, so on that topic, Tara, what do you think? What do you guys have seen in MacLean Engineering so far, as far as how people are responding to COVID, as well as the industry 4.0 that we're right in the midst of with the organizations that we deal with implementing new technologies and new ways of being. How's things been with you guys at MacLean?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot going on. On the COVID front, we've had to adapt and come up with systems to do remote commissionings and remote trainings. And whereas before we would always have someone fly to site, we have commissionings that happened in Australia. You just can't go to Australia right now. So it's been a big change for us to be able to adapt and use the technology that's been out there for a while, but that we really hadn't had to use before. And we've found some good success with doing all of that. And then just the industry change as a whole. I mean, our machines previously had been, fairly rudimentary as far as the control systems and wiring and all of that on them. And we're moving to a time of robotics. We're moving to a time of self-driving, of driver assist, all those different functionalities. And we're really having to adapt and change the way that we're building and thinking about how machines should be operated. So it's definitely a cool time to be in the industry.
So just listening to that, are there any is there competition between those different initiatives as far as like which one goes ahead, which doesn't? Like, how are you prioritizing? How are you handling those situations?
That is a great question. So internally, obviously, we have different product managers that push for their product lines as well as their product initiatives. Those product managers, some of them might be saying, "Oh, the thing that we need next is remote driver assistance," and then someone else says, "Oh, the thing that we need next is actually just full self-driving machinery." So there's people internally that are pushing for different projects. And so what we have to do is we really have to sit down. We have to pitch the project. We have to then go through and say, how many resources is this going to take? Is this something that's going to create a product that's sellable? Or is this something that's going to create a product that we can then iterate on and then potentially sell in the future? So then we have to line up and say, how many products or how many initiatives are we working on that are for the immediate future versus the, much longer future. We're talking 2024, 2025 when it comes to some of those projects. And then how do we allocate the resources? How do we allocate our engineering resources to each of those products? So there's definitely an internal struggle. I'd say a bit of internal competition when it comes to who actually gets to have their project be funded with resources. And that's definitely something that we're going through a lot right now, because there are a lot of changes in the mining industry right now.
So on that topic, like competing for resources, I've experienced it myself where you try to take on maybe too much. Like, is there a key number per manager? Or is it a key number per department? Is it 3? Is it 5? Is it 10? Like, is it based on a time horizon? How do you guys decide how to chunk out that change?
That is a really good question. So right now, as it works, we have both a product marketing manager and a product engineering manager assigned to one product. So as you go, you have both essentially the sales team represented, the customer represented, and that's all through the product marketing manager. So they're supposed to bring in what the customer would really want. And then the product engineering manager is supposed to bring in what is actually feasible and where the resources are. So I'd say that per product marketing manager and product engineering manager, each of them have about 3 products per person. And now there's overlap with those. So there's, one product engineering manager, one product marketing manager. I'd say once you get to be into that 4, 5 or greater number, you're really losing the dedicated time and resources that you need to have someone working on that product. We've also recently brought in a project manager to help with just the allocation of resources, the timing around it. One of the things that we often talk about is, okay, we say, a project might take 6 months with the resources that we have, but you really have to think about, do you actually have those resources full time, or are those resources actually committed to 2 different projects during that time? And then how do you allocate those resources? Which project wins first and which project goes second? So I know a lot of different companies are this is not a mining specific issue in this case, but a lot of different companies are dealing with a lot of different issues when it comes to how do you allocate the resources, which project goes first, and then once you've allocated those resources, saying those resources are not available for another project.
Yeah, and that's what becomes difficult. I mean, a lot of the companies that I've been talking to or working with or discussing this topic, I mean, it seems like the sweet number for the company, like not for like an actual manager, but it seems like for the company, they can take on anywhere, like you said, between 3 and 5 initiatives at once.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's been expressed is that COVID's been taking 3 of those 5 for the past 2 years. Because like you said, when it comes to resource allocations, you'll say like, these are the things I want to accomplish. It takes X amount of resources.
Mm-hmm.
But then you don't know when those resources are going to get sidelined with a quarantine or sidelined with, something that impacts the project by not being able to come to the office or not being able to even procure the parts that were on the list of procurement. So a lot of those things have been extended. So some of the clients that I've been talking and working with, they'd say, okay, for example, this initiative is due to launch in September, and they're looking out a year ahead because this current year has kind of been accounted for.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the most part, it's been very difficult to stay on time with those projects. Like the budget, when it comes to financial budget, is relatively well adhered to, but the time budget gets blown out because of all of the competition, either from internal factors and external factors, right? So that's what we're talking about this today. It's something that everybody has had to deal with, whether you've got a pizzeria and you're trying to resource up to serve your public, or all the way to building intricate and well-defined pieces of equipment that can be distributed across the world, right? So
One of the
Yeah.
things that I've experienced myself here at Technica in my role as manager of safety and training is I'm competing not only for time and resources, but also for the attention of, for us, it's the worker, the supervisor, line management, if you will. So we have these great change initiatives, great ideas. Well, I'm one department of 3 or 4 that are also trying to implement change. And then we're more or less fighting for the attention of our team to get an initiative rolled through. So there's some coordination that's got to happen there. And there's some like realistic, like, is it fair to the worker and the supervisor sometimes to like be plowing through these changes when it's just one after another and they're trying to get work done at the same time. So I got to be cognizant of that. And I wonder if Tara, if this might be something you've experienced, or is that something either your customers or internally? Is that something that you've come across?
Yeah, I think so. I think, we're always as a company looking to push the boundaries of what we think should be the standard in the mining industry. And I think that people are sometimes reluctant to change a little bit, and then add COVID on top of that. And I think it's really locked people up a little bit, just because you can't bring people in to do the training. You can't bring people in to do the commissioning. You can't bring in new bodies. And not just that, people are having a hard time hiring new bodies because there's a worker shortage as well. So, we've definitely run into those issues. I think COVID has just exacerbated those issues. I think that, people are always a little bit reluctant to change. And then on top of that, you throw in, okay, well, we're going to do this, but you're not going to be trained with someone on site. You're going to be trained with someone who's not there. And then you're going to be trained by, you know, normally we like to do on machine training. We like to have someone sitting with them right next to them. And we're saying, okay, this is going to be a new type of machine or a battery electric vehicle or something along those lines. And we can't have someone on site to work with you directly. So I think that there's just a little bit of reluctance and probably a little bit of fear because there's just, new technologies that are unknown, and it can be a little bit scary.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are quite a few boundaries that exist. Like even from my side of things with the software and technology world, as far as what's in the hands of the worker. Just like Eric said, the worker themselves, they've got change happening at home, they've got change happening at work. So everybody's kind of putting up some guardrails, if you so to speak, where it's like, these are the things that I can depend on. I know that I can stay within these boundaries and deal with the things that are coming at me every day. And then when we move the guardrail over, it creates a zone of confusion or almost like a zone of distress because they're really relying on those things that are static and not changing, such as systems. It's not often that you just change a system just like that. Like, obviously there's a lot of prep work and discussions and planning when it comes to implementing a new system. And I think that's where a lot of the apprehension has come in through this pandemic, is that there's been no warning. It's just been, we need to change systems and we're changing them now. Boop, guardrail moved, right? So it has had that effect. But at the same time, maybe we can start discussing about what we're able to put in place in order to help overcome those challenges with our clients, right? So one thing that I've learned to lean on a lot is the educational sector. We have a worker shortage, we've got talent shortage, we've got all these things. However, we do still have a large educational sector, especially in Canada, where we're producing the workforce that's going to be available for the future delivery of our products or services or mandates. So now it's, how far back in that pool do we go? Whether it's, secondary or post-secondary education, and start grooming that workforce and having them involved into what we think is going to be valid in the future. So that by the time it becomes a real service or product, they've been working on the concept from the get-go. So how have you guys, having any experience with that part, or what have you guys put together to kind of help remediate some of those roadblocks that you've been experiencing?
Yeah, so we've had some good success. We've partnered with Cambrian College up there. And we've had some good success working with them, working with the students coming out of there, and working with the students that are still in school there. And there's a lot of new, bright, super bright kids that are in school right now, and they have a lot of experience in technology that I think, as people are growing up now, they have more experience in technology than someone who grew up even 20 years ago. And so there's a lot of robotics experience. There's a lot of electrical experience. There's a lot of technology experience. And so being able to use those students with those expertise, that's really helped us a lot. Are you guys doing a similar program as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so we leverage same thing with Cambrian College and Laurentian University, capstone projects, placements, end of year or intra-semester projects where based on what they've learned so far, they can tackle a problem and then use that experience to get into the next leg of their education and tackle the next problem. So we've been doing that as well. And what we've also been doing is, especially for organizations that are entertaining certain changes, is let's get some students that are graduating or graduated and they're looking for an opportunity to add value to an organization's mandate. So let's put them in place with a series of different funding levels where that student could come in as basically like as a trial worker for the organization to help, for either from a clerical side or just like a sheer human resource side to help things move along. And then now you've got that window of opportunity to evaluate these people and then kind of roll into a full-time employment if that's a proper fit. So we're almost like creating new roles that may not have existed before by having that soft introduction into the workplace, which is a win-win for everyone, right?
Every worker deserves to go home safely at the end of the day. Book a demo with Sophie to discover how their groundbreaking EHS management software empowers workers to proactively avoid hazards and how organizations like yours can cultivate a stronger work culture. To learn more, you can visit them at sophie.com. Technica Mining is a premier underground mining and construction contractor. They stand for delivering quality project work on time and on budget through innovative thinking. Their excellent safety record, experienced workforce, and large equipment fleet will guarantee the timely completion of all your project needs. Trusted by the world's leading mining companies, Technica Mining has over 20 years of experience in mine construction, development, and production. Contact Technica Mining to take your next project to the next level. Visit them at technicamining.com. Change Itself is produced by Crownsman, the voice of industry. Check out more, including The Crownsman Show, Mining Now, Crownsman Energy, and Crownsman Ag at crownsman.com.
We're sort of scratching the surface on kind of a little bit of both. I mean, ideally, we'd like to be kind of where both MacLean and Sophie are talking about. We're just not there yet in our journey. We've started engaging at the high school level with co-op students, finally making a commitment to take them on more consistently and making it a priority to help develop them through that. We're in partnership with LaSalle Secondary, where we've got some training going on there, off school hours, and we're starting to build those relationships, but it's a very incremental change, and we're building up to it. So we're kind of building our capacity. We recently hired a recent graduate from Cambrian in business data. I struggle with that word. Business data analytics. Sorry, and we don't currently have that role. So like we're learning together. But it's certainly a skill set that we see there's a need for. So it's like developing that as we go. So I think on our end, I don't have the roadmap and like exactly we're not at the end goal, but it's kind of evolving and progressing as we go.
It's almost creating another set of competition for you because now you're opening up opportunity to reduce some roadblocks, but now you have to add resources and time to develop this role and position and properly manage the work that's happening, right? So that everybody gets value.
It's actually been really good because it's forced me to like take a step back and like as we're onboarding this person and we're going through like here's some like cool projects that we'd like to work, and it's like, okay, well that might be too far like out what do we need? What are the basics and the fundamentals we need in place before we can even maybe get at that data so we can have something actionable? So like it's just taking me back to think and look at it from a different perspective, which has actually been quite good because there's projects little initiatives that I wanted to work on for a long time that have been stalled just because I can't get the perfect solution. But I really realized that actually I need to step back and like, how are we collecting this data? What's it coming from? How can I put it to use? And what am I looking for? Okay, well, let's start putting that together so that I can action something, get some feedback going, so we can start to, automate some things on my own end to be maybe more productive and get more out of what we're already doing. So it's actually been quite interesting, especially like this week, just getting into it and just seeing that different perspective.
I love hearing that you guys have a similar experience with data analytics. You know, you hire a data analyst and you think, oh, I'd love to do this one project, and it's super obscure and complicated, and then you hire the person and you're like, actually, let's just start with are we collecting the right data, and is that data true? Like, do we believe that data that's coming in? But so it's great to hear that you guys have kind of had the same approach. You know, you come in, you're like, oh, this is going to be great, and then you're like, actually, let's just take a step back and say, is what we're doing correct, or are we just collecting the wrong data? So it's great to hear.
Well, I found myself chasing what I'll call noise. So like somebody's complaining about the way something's working, but it's one person or two people out of 500. Is there really an issue? I don't know, because I don't know what data we've got to go back it up. And I actually have nothing to look at and say, yeah, there's an actual issue, let's go deal with it.
Mhm.
And so we're just bouncing around, and it's just nice to give myself like the guardrails you're talking about, Gus. It allows myself to like a little bit of stability. Let's make the right decisions here, and let's use the resources in that time wisely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure, Tara, you guys get it all the time too. Is like, I want a machine to be able to do this. And you're like, well, theoretically it can for sure, but then you start reverse engineering that idea to what's possible. And sometimes the pieces lining up, and incrementally, you're going in the right direction. But then at least when you're doing incremental, when you start steering in the wrong direction, you get an early warning instead of just going straight to that and realize, oh man, now we spent a year working on something that we didn't really think through, and it's completely in the wrong direction. We need to reinvest and realign. So I think incremental analysis and incremental implementation, or that risk assessment side of things when you're deciding to do something, is important.
Yeah.
From the technology side, Tara, have you guys been able to break down some of the boundaries by introducing or creating or implementing new technologies that might have seemed cool as a 5-year project, but you kind of fast tracked the delivery because of out of necessity in the past 2 years?
Yeah. I I think actually, and it's going to sound very simple, plain and simple when I say this out loud, but um, coming into COVID, we very much worked in the office. The office is attached to the factory. You know, uh, if you were the engineer on a project, you just go onto the shop floor and look at the machine and talk to the guys working on it. And that actually led us to not have as much documentation as we probably should have had. And it also led us to not have um, the level of communication and the level of um, I'll call it internal knowledge. So there's a couple different pieces that we were able to really pinpoint and say this is not actually going to work during COVID. So one was obviously documentation. So creating more documentation has been something that's been great. I work with developers that have been putting a lot more documentation into their code because the developer that they're working with isn't sitting next to them at the desk next to them. They're sitting, at their home office, and so if you don't have that documentation in your code, you're just not going to know what the other person's really thinking or what they're doing. And then the other thing is just the ease of access. So being able to walk onto the shop floor, we really used Teams pretty rarely as our communication tool. And I think we're using it a lot more than we thought that we would in the past. So we've really, you asked about technology, and those are such simple technologies, but those have really been what have changed hugely for us. And I'm sure, you probably have something similar with something kind of simple like that, but you also probably have something that you're like, and we implemented this, and I'll be like, that's awesome. But for us, it was just really those little things that made a huge difference.
Yeah, I know, and I echo that as well. I mean, even though like we're in a similar kind of space with technology, and we were using Teams and central documentation systems and central work assignment systems and stuff like that before. So we were essentially already on the cloud, already using these tools. So when the instruction said, okay, well, go from home until otherwise otherwise noted, we just basically picked up all of our stuff, went home, plugged it in, and there was like a 1 hour interruption, and everybody caught back on Teams, and we just kept going. So the interruption was very, very little. But to your point, what it ended up doing at the same time is that we cannot just tap a coworker on the shoulder and kind of like link our heads together and brainstorm on an idea or solution, which you could have monster machined it together and made it work. But then if ever there was an issue long-term with that particular code or that particular process, you don't know who was in the room making that decision. You don't know how it even got there in the first place. The people that actually did it most likely don't even remember making that decision. So, so introducing those things of like, okay, we're thinking about making a change from a decision standpoint. Let's record it. Let's record how we got to that resolution, and then start tasking out, because now we have to create all these tasks at the micro level for all the team players that are involved into producing that end result. And then it just creates an enormous amount of documentation of what's occurred, as well as like we need a very well documented strategy for code management, for information management, for specs, for ideas. So we had the exact same occurrence where documentation, we almost started thinking, I mean, I've been talking about this for a long time, but we started thinking McDonald's, right? You've got an industry that's completely supported by the majority with high school students, right? And they have everything written out and depicted in pictograms and all these things, to the point where they onboard a new worker, it's already all there, and they just, it's a very smooth onboarding process, and the quality and quantity of service doesn't get impacted at all. So we said, how can we implement those kinds of things to have that similar occurrence as we scale, right?
Yeah. How did, so one of the things that you just touched on was onboarding. So one of the teams that I'm on grew from one developer at the start of COVID to now, I think there's 6 developers on the team. So that onboarding piece and documentation piece was so crucial. So did you guys have to change your onboarding process at all, or or potentially just like develop a onboarding process for remote onboarding, or is that not something that you had to deal with too much?
Yeah, no, we had to do was, switch it so that it's available remotely. So where somebody would come in and would spend half a day with, X person, another half a day with X person, another half a day with X person, and over the course of a week or 2 weeks, they would have all the pieces they need to understand the direction that we're going into. What we ended up having to do was document a it's almost like a self-managed onboarding. So here's a box with all your equipment, set it all up at home. We'll get on Teams, we'll introduce everybody together, and then follow this document step by step. Excuse me. Follow this document step by step, and it'll tell you who's responsible for for that step, and then just arrange yourself the schedule to do it.
You've had a little bit of a different experience, being that the work is very physical in nature still. So it has been, we didn't necessarily have the ability to go fully remote for an onboarding, but what it did do was we, had to look at how we structure the onboarding. So maybe instead of having 1 day a week, it's 2 days a week. So you could spread people out in a classroom, reduce the amount of material that was covered and stick to like the essentials. So we're reducing that amount of time face to face, but we're also communicating differently where we're sending the documents via, we're using Sophie through the document module, and people are reviewing it that way, and we're ensuring they're reviewing it, and it's being supported by the site. So we've certainly changed the way we do that and the way we communicate, but we're still heavily reliant on the teacher kind of student onboarding model.
So as far as MacLean Engineering, Tara, what can we look forward to? What can we expect over the next little while?
So I think it's a cool project, but we have a new Shotcrete Sprayer coming to market. And what we've done is we've actually changed the way that we're injecting I'm totally blanking on the word because I want to use the word resin, and that's not what we're talking about. But there's a way that you inject the actual component that will solidify the concrete that's being sprayed. And what we've done is we've changed how that component works, and that has allowed for just one, more accuracy in when you're spraying shotcrete. It's also allowed for quicker drying times, and it's allowed for less use of the material. So when you're spraying shotcrete, people were originally using a lot of the different components to spray the shotcrete. And what we've done is actually change this process so that it uses a lot less. So in the end, it should save you money in the long run, which is something that, it's always good for the customer if you're able to save them some money. And it's something that we're pretty excited about the new technology there.
So Tara, is that like a remote or an automated feature, or is that something that's heavily reliant on the operator? How does that work?
Yeah, so there still is an operator currently, but what we've done is we're actually developing this camera system that is on the front, and it will actually detect how much shotcrete is actually sprayed. So right now, where you actually have to poke and see, okay, did I spray this correctly, and what was asked for here? Was I supposed to be spraying an inch here, or how much was I supposed to be spraying here? This system will actually detect how much shotcrete has been sprayed, and was it sprayed evenly, and are you within the margins that you're supposed to be within, so that the safety standard there is actually way more increased. Yeah, so we're pretty excited about it.
Awesome, thanks for sharing that. I'm hearing this better quality of the application, which is really awesome. And then we get the reduction of rework and cleaning up that rebound, which is super cool. You need less materials, so if you take that all the way back to where the material's sourced in the first place, the environmental impact that solution like that's having, that's incredible.
Yeah,
I mean, we've seen it so many times, Eric, right? Where it's like, oh, this job based on the calculation is supposed to take 100 bags, and then you're 250 bags into it because of the human
on there.
Because of the human element, right? As far as we never really had a real systemic way of measuring accelerator, measuring dry material. It's all based on visual and based on feel and based on comfort of using the nozzles or using the increters.
Very much
having that automated is
that's really cool.
Yeah
I can see the quality, not only the cost, but just the overall quality and confidence behind what's there. Sometimes you're wondering, you're walking on the drift and you're like, is it 6 inches? Is it half an inch? I don't know. It covers a screen. What does that mean, right?
Yeah. And I mean, we at MacLean, our number one thing that we've always focused on is that safety aspect, right? That's why the bolter came to be, and that's been our bread and butter for so long. So, we're just continually trying to focus on that and say, how do we make it safer? And let's continue to make it safer. And just because something's been done one way, does that really mean that it's the safest way to go forward, or can we make it safer? So that's where this project came about.
That's great.
Awesome.
Right on. Well, hey, thanks for taking the time to, come on the show and discuss what's going on with yourself and MacLean Engineering. And I think if I had to take some key takeaways from our conversation today, it's, pay attention to your resources and what's available. Also pay attention to the impact, like the downstream impact of your next great idea. As well as, making sure that you just keep moving forward, no matter what, whether it's a small step or a big step, forward is forward, right? So I don't know if you guys are aligned with those key takeaways, but that's kind of what I got from our conversation today. And it's pretty groundbreaking.
It's really good. And one thing I want to thank you guys that I hadn't maybe had less of an appreciation for was on the documentation side of, documenting these changes, especially you guys are coming from a coding background. I could totally see it, but I see it in our own work, that ability to scale and to keep that growing and moving forward. I thought it was really, really sharp and something I'll take away from this conversation for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think it's just great to hear other people who are kind of going through the same things as you. So, we're all hoping that we're moving in the right direction, and it's good to hear that you guys are doing the same things that we're doing, and it makes me feel like we're doing something right.
It's validating. Right on. Well, hey, thank you everybody for joining us on episode 7. We really have a great time producing these episodes, and as we're getting closer and closer to closing out the year, we've got some great ideas for you, and looking forward to touching base in 2022 in the next few episodes. So if you want to keep up with our content, LinkedIn, Change Itself, and changeitself.com to get access to our YouTube channel. And we look forward to hearing your feedback and learning more about your experiences, so we can keep molding the show for you guys. Right. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.